Good evening and welcome to the September 30th, 2015 special town board meeting. Special in that this is not a normal legislative session, but it is a session that we're having a public hearing. And the public hearing is with regards to local law number 2 that's being proposed for code changes and upgrades. And at this point, I would ask everyone to please rise and for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll ask our great staff here in the back to please lead us tonight. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'll ask our clerk, the wonderful Lisa Grosser, who is with us tonight, if she would please call the roll.
Cole. Here. LaFountain.
Here.
Metzler.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Great.
Absent.
Thank you very much. And I would ask our clerk if she would please read the public hearing notice number 1.
Proposed local law number 2 of 2015 to provide for the codification of the local laws, ordinances, and certain resolutions of the town of Penfield into a municipal code to be designated as the Code of the Town of Penfield. This legal notice was published in the Penfield Post on September 17th on the town website and town clerk bulletin board. No postcards were sent due to the fact that this is a town-wide action.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And I would ask our town attorney, is this properly advertised before the board?
Yes, it is.
Okay. With that, I would like to recognize Mark Valentine. Mark is our Director of Engineering and Planning. Mark and a number of other staff members, and I think this update, this codification, touched almost every department across the town. But Mark was the one that was the nose to the grindstone and get us to this point. So Mark, thank you for that.
Thank
and
you.
I would ask that you would give us an update as to where we are and where we're going with this proposed local law number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and thank you to the board, staff members in the audience, and those at home. Basically, what we've been tasked with is updating our town code. This is something that hasn't been done for a number of years, and recently it started with an update to General Code. General Code is a company that we went through in order to update it, get it online, make it a more searchable document. Currently, our code, and let me back up, basically the town code is what this board, the town board, the planning board, the zoning board bases their decisions upon. That's basically the foundation of the town, what all decisions the boards go on, code enforcement officers, town staff use on a daily basis, going through these code items and making sure whether things meet them or not. So the last time it was updated was 1981. So one, it was in need of an update. Not saying we haven't had updates since then. We've gone through the sign package updates. We've gone through some updates for most recently grade and fill permits. So there has been updates, but just not a whole overhaul of the document in general. So based on that, I say it was last in 1981, so it was basically typed documents. A lot of them, were not electronic, not searchable. They were in many different locations. We had a lot of policies, ordinances, local laws that had kind of gotten clustered together. Some had redundancies, some had overlaps or inconsistencies with them. So the major overhaul was to, 1, get it online, 2, clean out a lot of the redundancies, things that were conflicting, and then update it to most of the state code laws. So as I go down through this, I will kind of highlight the sections and what some of those changes are. The code itself is 510 pages long. I do have a hard copy here this evening. The board has copies, and it is available online. It's been available online at least a month leading up to this meeting for the public to take a look at. If you do go to our website, under the quick links section, it does have the code in its full draft. It is a draft form until the board adopts it. It does have a 213-page summary of the changes. And as I go through that, it's not as daunting as the 213 pages, but it isn't. Oftentimes they just swapped out a section because we moved things around and adjusted it, and it was easier than identifying each and every little tweak that was done. They would revise and replace a section. So that's why it looks at being 213 pages. Our existing code is online as well. As you go under online documents, the existing code is there and available. So if you do want to, people at home want to do a comparison between the two sections, the existing code as it exists today is there. The proposed code is under the quick link section on the main page. So as I spoke about General Code, General Code is a company that many municipalities use. I believe most of all the municipalities within Monroe County already have contracts with General Code. It's a company that does a codification, basically takes all your written documents together, puts them in one location, cleans them up, makes it available online. So they host it through their site. You can search all the different towns, and then through that, to make it more convenient for the public, staff, and the board members, is having it searchable. So you can look up sidewalks, you can look up decks, and it'll give you all the instances in our code that reference those sections. So it's quickly and readily reviewable through that. Obviously, this project's been a long time in coming. We've started this a couple of years ago, actually. We first got on board with General Code, and initially it was just supposed to be a codification, and basically we'll take all your documents, put them in one spot, put them up online. But as we started looking at it with staff and the board, there were some things that were outdated with it. There was references to a milk control officer. There was references to, other items that are no longer in use or not needed in the community. So we thought it was a good opportunity to do an overhaul, to look at it as a whole thing, while we had that opportunity with General Code to do that update. So many thanks to the board. Even before we get started, it's been many hours sitting with the board, kind of reviewing those changes line by line. Many thanks to the staff members. If people do have questions, I can't say that I have the answer to every single section. As the supervisor shared, I've kind of been the head of guiding this forward. We've tasked each department to do their own written update or review of their section they're an expert in. So if comments come in, we'll take a look at those, provide those to the board for the board's consideration, and if responses are needed, we'll tap those given departments to have them take a look at that. So with that overview, unless the board or audience has further questions, I was going to kind of run down through the chapters and just kind of provide a Reader's Digest highlight of those sections and share that.
Yep, if you would, please.
And I'm kind of skipping ahead on sections, but just as they're listed within that overview, I kind of did some of the highlights. So the first one is the definition section. Obviously, we'd had a lot of definitions that are no longer needed, definitions updated to meet state code, local requirements. So there were, and I'm not going to detail what those are, but there were a lot of definition updates. Chapter 94 is building permits. Basically, the major update of this section was making it match New York State Building Code and the Electrical Code. That's what we use on a daily basis. So I want to make sure that our local code matches what they have, and that we reference their documents so in the future, as the state code changes or is updated, our code automatically updates as well. So it's a matter of matching what they have, and each change does not require a new action by this board. Chapter 97 is unsafe buildings. This was just to add clarification to the process that we use to get a building determined to be unsafe, and actions by this board to move forward. Chapter 116 is about firearms. There were no changes, and there are no proposed changes to the distance regulations. There was some minor tweaks to make sure we matched with what the state law requirements are. Chapter 195, games of chance. The only change in this section was the addition of a statement that says the games of chance shall be conducted in accordance with state law. So again, that was just an update to the state law piece. Similarly with Chapter 144, notice of defects, again, that was updated to match state law. Now as we get into Chapter 180, which is sewers, I referenced earlier, we did get remove the reference to milk control officer. There was a minor change to the sewer unit allocation. It does not affect any residents or businesses in the community and how we assess your sewer use charges. Basically, it was a change for the school district. We used to have it that it was based on the number of pupils in the school, which would have to follow up with them. Kids come, go, end of the year. It became kind of a administrative issue trying to keep up with the number of students to, how their sewer rate is charged. Basically, we charged it based on the usage, basically the water usage, which, that's how everything else is calculated. So it kind of brings them more in line with the rest of the community. Under sewers is also a recycling section. We updated our code to match what the Monroe County recycling standard is, and also the new New York State DEC standards with that as well. We added more detail to, it's called FOG, F-O-G, but stands for fats, oils, and grease. Made more stringent requirements on what can and cannot be discharged to the sanitary sewer. Basically enhanced our requirements for restaurants and other locations to have oil or grease separators at their facility to make sure we're not plugging up the sewers. One thing of note, we did eliminate the requirement for licensed plumbers or licensure of plumbers. This was more of an administrative action than anything else. Basically, if you came in, you paid your permit, you showed you were a licensed plumber in the city, we just handed you a permit, so you're now licensed in the town of Penfield. There was not a test, there was not a verification of them being a licensed plumber or anything else, so it was more administrative than anything else. So it really is not eliminating or having less protection for the community. Obviously, they can, get a licensed plumber on their own. It just kind of takes away another level of government or administrative level on our end for the sewer part. Chapter 207 under taxation, we did not change any of the tax rates or anything with that. Basically, it's a cleanup of the code section, eliminated some redundancies, and there was a senior citizen exemption section that was revised to more closely match state law. Chapter 215, vehicle parking on private property. Again, that was just a reformatted section. There were no changes proposed. Under Chapter 220, vehicles and traffic, we did make a revision to how speed limits are referenced. Our code does detail out what the speeds of the roads are, and we used to have it listed that we had every street labeled and saying that it was 25 miles an hour for a subdivision street. Given that new development happens every year, every time a new street was added, basically our code became outdated. We no longer referenced that new road. So we revised that section basically to state that any new subdivision street, unless otherwise detailed in the code, automatically is 25 miles an hour. So we don't add a whole lot of arterial streets. We don't add a lot of primary state and county highways. Most of the stuff is added as new subdivision streets, which automatically falls under the 25 mile an hour speed limit. We also took out, there was references to crosswalks listed in our code. So every time we paved a road, oil and stoned a road, a sidewalk, or, a crosswalk goes away, we do put those back, but we had it referenced out for each one, exactly the location, whatever, that just, leads for chance for error in there to have those listed. Under Chapter 232 waterways, Jim Costello has been working hard with the 3 other communities of Roddiquate and Webster to adopt the harbor management plan, and that's being incorporated into our code under this update. And now to the biggest section, basically, is Chapter 250, which is our zoning code section. We are not proposing any zoning changes with this code update adoption. We have other stuff pondered out there, whether it's mixed use or other stuff, that none of that is in this code update here. We'll have a separate public hearing for those items. So I just want to put that out there ahead of time. We did some cleanup of definitions in trying to meet more of the state DEC green infrastructure regulations. They're always pushing for less impervious surface. So that's one thing we looked at along with the board, was reducing our requirements for parking more and more. And then we also adopted into our code is a requirement for new builds to require shared parking with the adjoining properties for commercial aspects. If you can share parking, have less parking that's out there, reduce the impervious area, allow for more green space. So in our code before, we required 5.4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of building. We've reduced that down to 5.0, and then, either through variances, with the zoning board have gone below that. This board has entertained levels below that, and we'll continue to monitor that as it goes. We're looking at taking that as kind of a progressive step downward, trying to reduce parking. We don't have seas of asphalt that's just required, whether it's needed by the business or not. A lot of times in the past, they just put the parking in just to meet our code, whether it was necessary for their individual business or not. We've proposed reduction to parking space sizes. Currently, our code requires 9 by 20 spaces. We're proposing to change it to 9 by 18. This has been a variance that's been granted by the zoning board many times, and is kind of standard in the industry that 9 by 18 spaces are sufficient. As I stated previously, we do allow for reduction in parking for parcels that do have shared access and shared parking agreements. understanding that, having a road connection between properties obviously will require additional pavement. We've given them some reductions in green space to accommodate that, but also require less parking as well. So hopefully it's a benefit for the residents in the community to have cross-access between businesses. That's been a big proponent of this board and the planning board, to make sure we do have cross-access between businesses, eliminate curb cuts, minimize conflict points out on the roadway. We are proposing some changes to the, the EPODs, which is the Environmental Protection Overlay Districts. We do have 5 within our community. Those are areas that the boards look at as basically potentially environmentally sensitive areas that the boards review. Basically, it's not a prohibitive area, but those are areas that require a higher level of review by the boards as they come in for their applications and by staff. We are proposing some changes to the mapping of those areas. The woodland, basically, we've taken them off of aerial photos, having updated aerial imagery either through Google or through pictometry. We've been able to better identify where those areas are. We've also received information on through LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. Basically, that's a technology that can show and actually maps out what the contours are throughout the town. So we have access to data that shows contours through the town up to or down to 2 feet in increments. So we've updated our steep slope areas to better match that mapping and show where those steep slope areas are. But again, it's based on survey. Once it comes in for the board, staff kind of uses those as reference areas to know if there's going to be a higher level of review needed for that. We've encouraged more efficient lighting through this code. We didn't specifically call out LED lights, not knowing what, hopefully this code lasts us, till the next update is, LED lights is the here and now. It may be something more efficient than that. CFL bulbs were all the rage just a couple of years ago, so we didn't want to tie down anything specific, but encourage applicants in new construction to use more efficient lighting. The commercial tower section was basically streamlined. It was a little cumbersome before. We tried to define the difference between commercial and residential towers as well as dishes. Again, updating to the new technology. Most people used to have satellite dishes in their backyard that were 6, 8 feet or larger, ground mounted. Most people have a satellite dish that sits on the roof that's, maybe down to 2 feet. So again, we tried to update our code to more match or more keep in kind with new technology. Under the historic preservation section, we added some clarification to note that it is an overlay district. The historic preservation is not a zoning district on its own. It's within another zoning district and then has an overlay to it. And then lastly, we did propose revisions to the shed schedule. So requirements or allowable shed sizes was pretty rote before of, if you had 0 to 1 acres, 2 to 4 acres, or 5 and above. We tried to give a little bit more gradation between there. So basically we've established that it's 1% of your lot size is what we're proposing. So if you have a 4-acre parcel, you can have a larger size shed meeting all the setback requirements in the code than somebody that has 2 acres. And we've allowed a minimum on the small end as well. We've also proposed a slightly higher roof, knowing that if we allow the sheds to be slightly larger, just pure construction, that the roof elevation needs to be higher as well. I don't know if the board or the audience has any questions on those updates. We have received some emails already today with some comments. Those will be shared with the board. If anybody has any other comments, please feel free to email them to planning@penfield.org. That'll come to the planning department. We'll collect those, share those with the board. I believe the board has indicated that they want to leave this hearing open for another month following this. Give people a lot of time to come in and talk with staff. If they have questions, feel free to contact me as well if they have questions. Email their comments in. We'll share them with the board, and I believe it's on your October 28th agenda as we're looking forward is kind of the next time the board would be discussing this. Bring those comments forward. We'll share them with the board, have a discussion of any proposed changes from the public, questions, concerns, review at that point in the meeting. We still have to go through the secret part of it if the board is considering adoption, and then any changes to the document at that point in time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Before I open it up first for the board and then for the audience, again, I'd like to just take a minute and say thank you to, the group that really has put a lot of effort into this. So you mentioned early on, I think I did as well, that every department had some amount of review that they needed to do. But certainly, as I look out and I see some members of your team, we got Zach Nersinger, who was part of the planning department, yourself, Jim Costello from Development Services, and a couple of others that out of your office really did the heavy lifting. So just want to say thank you and appreciate that. Certainly had a nice perspective as we took a look at some members of our planning staff who are new into local government, have got a great career in local government, bringing their perspective. You have a Jim Costello who's been involved with local government for more than 32, 33 years. I think it was a nice balance that came to the table. So I really appreciate everyone's involvement to really push the envelope to get us thinking what makes the most and the best sense, for our residents and for what they might be doing, in their particular area. So I appreciate that and great efforts. At this time, I would open it up to the board if a board has any comments or specific questions that they would like to ask Mark and the staff.
I have none. As you mentioned, we've spent hours together
I
going
say
over
we've
this.
sat in the boardroom on many nights and gone through line by line what the
And I can
proposals
imagine
are.
that it was many more hours for each hour that was spent with us in preparation.
It's-
So
it's-
I concur with the supervisor as far as how much preparation you gave us to look ahead of time and also for discussion
It's
purposes.
definitely been a team effort, so thank you to the board and thank you to all the staff for their support on this.
Okay. Board, other questions or comments at this time? All right, I'd like to open it up to the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on this particular matter? Okay, seeing none. I did receive this one item that I'd make part of the record and make sure that you receive it. This is from Mr. Lewis. It is my understanding that while you're considering updates to the town code, you are considering revising some commercial parking lot requirements. Decreasing the number of spaces is a great way to eliminate paving and improve the environment. In my view, vans, trucks, and SUVs hamper vision from cars parked alongside, causing hazard while backing up. Please also consider a requirement to locate all such vehicles separate from automobiles to lessen the hazard. Thank you. So we'll make sure that a copy of this goes to you. We get that from the town clerk's office.
Okay.
All right. As Mark has indicated, we'll leave this open for approximately a month. The next opportunity that we will discuss it will be at a work session on October 28th. And provided that we've received all the items, had an opportunity to review them, the board then would be looking to adopt in early November. So that's the tentative plan right now, and unless we become aware of something that we have not totally vetted out. But I think the staff certainly has done a great job of doing that. So there being no further comments from the board or the audience at this time, I'll declare this public hearing closed, and we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. The next item is communications and announcements. We do have a couple of small announcements tonight, and the first one, I would recognize Paula Metzler for that comment.
The town of Penfield will host a one-day recycling event for Penfield residents on Saturday, October 10th from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Public Works Complex on Jackson Road. Services for the day are secure document destruction, metals and appliance recycling, brush disposal, and clothing and linens donations. There will be no electronics recycling at this event. Recycling day is for Penfield residents only. Proof of residency will be checked at the gate. Please direct any questions you have to the Department of Public Works at 340-8710 or visit penfield.org for additional information.
Great, thank you. The only announcement that I have is that the town hall offices will be closed on Monday, the 12th, in observance of Columbus Day. And then one item for our town board member, Linda Cole.
Oh, I was going to mention that anyway. I don't need to read that. It's the last chance for our community bikes drop-off. We're having the 5th annual Penfield Rotary Town of Penfield Bike Drop-Off. We've gathered over 1,000 bikes in the past 4 years. This will be the 5th one. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 3rd. So if you have any unwanted bikes or bike parts or anything of that nature, they'll accept it, our community bikes. We will gather it, put it on their vans, and they will take it to our community bikes where they rehab the bikes and they give them back to people in need for their transportation to work, for their children. It's a great community effort, and please, if you have any bikes out there, don't lay them out there in the front for the garbage man to come and pick it up. Please bring them over to the Penfield Community Center, 1985 Baird Road, on Saturday, October 3rd. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Move on to public participation. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on any matter this evening? Seeing none. There are no additions or deletions to tonight's agenda. There are no minutes for the board to approve this evening. I'll ask the board, town clerk and town attorney, have we received any petitions since the last time that we got together? Seeing none. There are no resolutions by function this evening. I'll ask, is there any old business to come before the board?
No.
Seeing none, is there any new business to come before the board? Again, seeing none. Last opportunity for public participation. Seeing no further public participation, the September 30th, 2015 special town board meeting stands adjourned at 7:32. Thank you to staff for your efforts. Thank you to Penfield TV. Next regular scheduled town board meeting is next Wednesday, the 7th, and that will be a hearing for the town's 2016 budget. Have a good evening. Thank you.